Okay, welcome everyone to this full council on the 20th of June 2024. I'll run through the fire evacuation procedure. There is no fire drill planned, so if the fire alarm sounds, please follow the committee staff and leave by the exit nearest the large screen at the front of the room and proceed down the fire exit to the courtyard. Once it is safe to return, councillors will receive a text message. Officers will also advise when it is safe to return to the meeting. Webcasting. We are recording the meeting this evening. The webcast will be transmitted live and will also be available on the council's website following the meeting. Generally, the public seating areas are not filmed. However, by entering St George's Suite and using the public seating area, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of these images and sound recordings for webcasting and training purposes. Pre-election publicity period. There is a UK parliamentary general election taking place on the 4th of July 2024. This means we are in the pre-election period where restrictions on publicity apply to the council and how it conducts its business. Can I remind councillors of the additional publicity restrictions when making statements and during debates? Thank you. Item number 1, apologies for absence. I will take any apologies for absence, please. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Apologies from Councillors Hilliard and McGeorge.
Thank you. Are there any other apologies for absence? Councillor Blake.
Councillor Andrew Barnes.
Thank you. Now moving on to item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest to be made by members? Councillor Ansell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to declare an interest in item 5. This item relates to my disclosable pecuniary interest as a director of a business that operates within the planning industry. I've taken the advice of the monitoring officer and will remove myself from the meeting for the duration of that item. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations of interest? Councillor Headley.
The usual county ones.
Yeah, we'll take the two-hatted county councillors as a en bloc declaration of interest. Thank you. Moving on to item 3. Do I have agreement that the minutes of the annual council and extraordinary meeting held on the 23rd of May 2024 are a true and correct record? I'm hoping to seek the consensus of the meeting without the need for a formal vote. I'll take that as a consensus. Thank you. Item number 4. Independent Review Panel Report on IT Allowance for Members. I welcome the panel to the meeting and invite Balbinder Singh, the chair of the panel, to introduce their report at this time. Thank you, and this will be untimed.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Balbinder Singh. I'm the chair of the Independent Remuneration Panel. We were appointed by Basildon Council in November 2021. There is 3 of us, myself, Nicholas Street and Olga Zarkosi. In May 2023, the Independent Remuneration Panel presented its report and recommendations following an in-depth review of the scheme of members' allowances. One of the recommendations that was approved was the IT allowance, that it remained unchanged at £450 per annum at the current time. We We agreed that it ought to be paid monthly, and that this element of the members' allowance scheme was to be reviewed by the independent remuneration panel once the council had taken a decision regarding IT provision for councillors. Following the Cabinet decision taken on the 20th of March 2024 that all members be required to use a standard suite of IT equipment, software and the associated security protection to allow them to undertake their roles as councillors and more confidently fulfil the legal requirements on them as data controllers, the panel was asked to consider and recommend to full council any changes that should be made to the current IT allowance. In March, a report was presented to Cabinet seeking endorsement of an improved approach to the cybersecurity to support elected members in handling resident and council data, and proposing that all members be required to use a standard suite of IT equipment, software and associated security protection. We undertook some benchmarking. The benchmarking showed that the majority of councils whose data on IT allowances was compared with Basildon IT allowances, they either had a lower or no separate IT allowance. Only 2 councils paid a separate IT allowance to their members, and several councils stated in their members' allowance scheme that members' IT allowance was considered as part of the basic allowance available to all members. Therefore, following these findings and consideration of the provision of IT equipment to all members from the commencement of the new municipal year, the recommendations of the panel, we agreed that the IT element of the members' allowance scheme, currently at £450 per annum, for it to be removed for the reasons that I will go into. We also did look at the financial implications and the decision to remove the IT allowance. Then the budget in relation to the IT allowance would be reduced to zero, resulting in a saving of £450 per member per annum, £1,800 over a 4-year term. However, this would need to be offset against the provision of IT equipment to councillors, which equated to £1,950 over a 4-year term. It was £950 for the laptop and £1,000 for the Microsoft licences. So, I think that's it.
I'd like to thank you for your report and pass on my thanks to your fellow members of the panel. I now call upon Councillor Callaghan, Leader of the Council, to move the recommendations within the report. And this will be up to 10 minutes. It does not require a seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I begin by thanking the panel for all of their hard work? And I move the findings and recommendations of the panel regarding the IT allowance for members. As members will know, the Local Authorities Regulations 2003 require that we have a scheme of allowances reviewed at least every 4 years, and the Independent Remuneration Panel was convened to review the members' allowance scheme in 2022-2023. And while the scheme was approved by full council in May 23, it was decided, as we've heard, that the IT allowance element would be reviewed after a decision regarding IT provision for councillors. In March 2024, a report was presented to Cabinet proposing that IT equipment be provided to all councillors. This proposal was approved by the then Cabinet, and the Independent Remuneration Panel has since reviewed the IT allowance element in light of that decision. As the public will know, currently councillors receive an annual allowance of £450 for IT equipment. This allowance was intended to ensure that members could acquire the necessary IT tools to perform our duties effectively. However, the allowance resulted in a variety of personal IT equipment being used, with no standardisation in operating systems or security measures. The new proposal ensures that all members are provided with a standard suite of IT equipment, software and security protection by the Council. This approach supports better cyber security and allows councillors to confidently manage residents and council data, fulfilling our obligations as data controllers. After thorough consideration, the Independent Remuneration Panel has recommended that the IT allowance of £450 per annum be removed. This recommendation is based on the fact that councillors will now have standardised IT equipment provided by the council, making the allowance redundant. Financially, the change will result in significant savings. The current IT allowance costs the council £75,600 over a 4-year term. Removing this allowance offsets that expenditure that we incur by providing that allowance to all 42 members. Now, I understand the IT changes haven't been without their issues, but given that the tech does now exist, can councillors really justify to our electorate an additional allowance and expenditure? Mr. Mayor, I would ask that the council endorse the recommendations of the independent panel this evening, and over to you for debate.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. I now open this for debate. Are there any speakers? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My group will be voting against. I did seek to create a bit of cross-party consensus, but that failed, to pause this for a year, because we've had this technology imposed on us, and when you touch these laptops, they're red hot. I'm not having that in my home. It's not in my home. I keep it in my group room. I travel in every day, Monday to Fridays, and I do most of my casework on my county councillor's email account because it works. This system we've been given, some residents have complained to me, and I said I think the guy who bought this was driving a three-wheeled yellow van, and when he dropped these off was peeling off Betamax stickers, but that's personal opinion. My real reason to be opposed to this, and I think this decision should be paused for a period of time, because I as a member have not been consulted, nor none of my members, is I don't want this council to end up like Westminster did. You remember 2009 with the expenses, MPs putting in for legitimate claims, and they got besmirched by the odd MPs who put in wild expense claims, yes? So you give us a laptop, how does it get the internet? I'm quite happy with Freeview, but when I became a councillor I had to get broadband and obviously off a cable TV provider. But I don't see no point in having that. You're not going to pay for the internet. My colleague Councillor Brown, he won't be able to deal with your emails, will he? Because broadband costs money. Residents, you talk about data security. This is my councillor's work phone. I pay for that in my allowance, and many of my group, in fact all of my group, have a separate chip, and that costs money as well. So if we go down this road of data security, I have a work phone, and all my group have their own sort of council work phone. Are you going to start giving us extra mobile phones? Because you talk about data security, well, there it is there. People can text you, WhatsApp you a problem, and we're quite right and concerned about resident security. And residents don't always want to send an email. They'd rather send a text or WhatsApp to say to their council, look, can the dog bins be emptied, yada, yada, yada. And of course we want to reply and respond to that resident. Now, do we want to end up like Westminster was? Members having to submit receipts for their broadband, submit receipts for their telephone, submit receipts for this, submit receipts for that. It's bureaucracy for the officers, and it makes all members look bad. Now, my group will vote against. I expect this to pass tonight. And I would ask the Independent Remuneration Board to speak to my group, because we do a hell of a lot of casework, and I don't say that to besmirch other members. That wasn't the point of me saying that. The point of me saying is, when you have this standard pot of money, there are no expenses, no receipts, no this, no that. Because I would say most people in this room are straight. I can't think of anyone who isn't not straight financially. But as I say, broadband costs money. Telephone contracts cost money. Residents email contact me about a problem. Many of them pensioners. I print off their casework. I do use the council's post, but who pays for that printer? Who pays for the electric? Who pays for the heating? Should members be expected to submit expense receipts? My group won't be, but is this the slippery path we're going down? And I think a line needs to be drawn here. It's not the principle of the money, because it is taxed. We don't see every penny of that 450. The taxman has a big bite of that. And I think it's right, this is looked at again. Because yes, you've given us laptops. Yes, the laptops have to be paid for. But they're no good without electricity, and they're no good without broadband. So I can't change anything tonight. but I've put my group's opinion on the record. I'm sure other members and groups will have their views, but you can't just say to someone, we're giving you a car if there ain't no petrol in the tank. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Blake.
I have to say, I don't disagree with one comment that Councillor Smith said. But no, and he knows that. This group will be voting in support of this because that's the democracy we work on. But he's absolutely right. I have to do stamps. I get people who have not got, people in Billericay who have not got Wi-Fi and haven't got internet and everything like that. So I have to put my stamp and send that by post. I still have to use copy. Tonight, Nick, for example. Now don't take this as criticism. We're here tonight. We've all got new ITs, therefore we don't need any paper. But the group over there have just been given a whole, and I'm not arguing it's wrong. You've all been given a copy of the agenda. You've all been given a hard copy of the agenda. Where is that fair? Why? How is that fair? You know, if we're going to say we're going to have that laptop, but you know what? I still want a hard copy. Is that going to go for everyone? Because it should do. Everybody should be entitled. If this is what's happening already tonight, which I've seen for the first time, and I was shocked. I won't lie to you. I thought, well, we've got this now. This is the way we're going to go. I've got no problem with that. But when I see that we can actually still get a hard copy, then I'm going to ask a request, and I say it publicly now. I want a hard copy for all the committees that I'm on, and including full council, because if what's good for one is good for the other. So it's wrong. I just think it's wrong. The IT, as we all know, just has not worked. Full stop. There have been improvements, but I think it's only right that you should know that if whilst it sounds good on paper, excuse the pun there, paper, but it actually hasn't worked. We're still having to, I certainly am, I won't name the people, but having to phone up officers, which we're not allowed to do now, for them to tell me how I can get on to look at an email address on the IT. And it worked. Funny thing is, though, IT people have not bothered to push that down to every member of this council. It can work now in some cases. It's actually not too bad. Still can't get hold of every officer that you want to get hold of, but none more for that. So it's just not working. But as far as I'm concerned, I do not disagree with anything that Councillor Smith said.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Hang on. Thank you. Councillor Headley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I promise I won't make a habit of this, but I absolutely agree with Councillor Callaghan, the Leader of the Council. I've been using a county laptop for over 20 years with no problem at all. Any printing I want can be done at County Hall. Any printing I want done on this laptop can be done here. For security reasons, Councillor Callaghan's absolutely right. This was brought to the attention of the Audit Committee at County some years ago on the risk register for the possibility of councils being vulnerable to all sorts of cyber attacks and ransomware. And a number of councils have had to pay considerable sums to undo the damage that's been done to their IT systems. As usual, Councillor Smith occupies a parallel universe which I'm not familiar with, and his arguments are completely fictitious, they don't exist, and he's making observations on a system that he barely understands. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Headley. Councillor Baggott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank the Independent Remuneration Panel for their report and for the work that went into that. We have always, on principle, said that if you have an Independent Remuneration Panel, we should abide by whatever their recommendations are, and therefore that's what we will be doing. However, a couple of points that I would like to raise, which sort of are tangential to Councillor Smith's, but relevant, and also Councillor Blake. When the IT system was first being discussed and the idea of cyber security, which I agree with Councillor Callaghan, absolutely vital that this council is protected, it was mooted by officers that each member would be spoken to and a bespoke approach would be looked at so that each member was able to have the device of their choice that would enable them to function appropriately based upon their roles, their work and everything else. And from all I'm hearing, that hasn't happened. It's been a one-size-fits-all, and that was not what was promised. So there's an officer failure there. There's also an officer failure that when the new system was set up, it shouldn't be that a member finds out by getting in touch with IT and eventually having a call back that he discovers how it is that you access the contact sheets within the system itself. This is something the common sense would have said with the new system, a briefing should have been organised for members so that they could understand how the system works, and what the functionality is and what you can do with it. That's never been done. The whole system that has been put into place isn't actually working right now, and therefore what I would ask of the Independent Remuneration Panel is that they review this, and as part of their dealings over the next year, they actually consult with members to find out how it's rolling out, how it's working, because they then might choose to revisit what their recommendations are further down the line based upon the experience of members of this council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Baggott. Are there any more members wishing to speak? Oh, yeah. Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whilst I like the laptop itself, it's perfectly adequate. What I don't like is the fact that all my emails today have been returned to me. The system doesn't function. When I go into the site where we have to operate, because we can't send it to council inquiries, it says on the laptop when you send an email to them that it doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't interact. You can't take an email from your email where a resident writes into you and put it into that system and get it to function. I spent a lot of time this week trying to sort this out, and I simply can't. I have had enough of it. The telephone is not adequate. I've got the same phone that I use for Marie Curie. It's a Nokia, it works on the same principle. My phone with Marie Curie works perfectly well. This phone doesn't. It's absolutely useless. And quite frankly, that I've had to come in tonight and run around and try and get a copy of the agenda because it didn't come to me. Now, I know the girls always send the stuff out. I know my name is probably on the list. But as far as this computer, this software is concerned, I don't exist. And quite frankly, for all the years that I've done IT, I've been using Microsoft Options since 1995, and now I'm finding that I'm a complete idiot and I can't seem to do it. Now, why is that? Because this system has been put out too soon and it simply doesn't function correctly. All the email addresses that I call up when you go to 2 and you put the first couple of letters in, you should get a list of names come up that you're using all the time. And it simply doesn't work. I've tried to cut and paste names from previous emails that I've sent and put them into the 2. It doesn't work. I can't even send an email to my leader because what comes up? His address at county. It doesn't come up with his member's address. Now, if I'm supposed to work like that, considering for the last 3 years I've worked off this, and don't give me the old adage about the fact that it's the cyber security, that's rubbish. I work for the biggest law firm in the world, and the problem was with the servers, it wasn't with the software on the computers. I've used my phone, I've had a second chip in my phone, which I pay £10 a month for, and that worked perfectly well. Do all my emails, all my diary, everything on one phone, and now I've got this. It's absolutely inadequate. Now, if anybody else finds it works, then fine, but I certainly don't. And any IT person can have a look at this computer tonight, and you will find that it's not functioning correctly. Now, that's it, and I'm sorry I've lost my temper, because I'm just so angry, it's so frustrating. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Robbins. Councillor David Harris.
Can I say, first of all, I have never used my phone for council workers hall whatsoever. So as far as this is concerned, I can work it. But I'm of an age where they call me a silver surfer, and I can surf it okay. I'm finding it useful. On the question, I will support the recommendation tonight, of the panel because I think we should. But I share both, especially Councillor Baggett's point. I think it should be reviewed for one simple reason. I believe when I was here previously, when we talked about things related to the remuneration panel, a lot of members were spoken to get their views. Here, there's a lot of new members this time round, and I think some of those need to be consulted within the next year to find out, is it working without the allowance? What are the problems? Because I think then it may be a different result. I don't know. But it might well be the system improves and everyone's happy. But I think the point Councillor Baggett made is very valid. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Larkin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a problem worse than that because where I live, my broadband speed is 1.2 gigs. So everything that comes in, I lose it all. It's not a good system. I'm trying to work it out. BT is still working on the complaint, which I gave them 6 weeks ago. But because we're in a valley, it's down to county, they tell me, to give us quick broadband. But I don't think they're going to do that. So I have a problem unless I go into work, and I don't go into work every day. So I can't receive anything. I'm working on it. I can get a Nokia box that's going to cost me £360. So it's not good for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Larkin, and I'll call the last speaker, Councillor Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with what my colleague Councillor Blake has said regarding the agendas. This year, especially on planning committee, we know some of the agendas are quite large, and only having them on here and not always having access to the building because we're at work would entail printing costs for ourselves at home. Paper, ink, etc. When this first came to us, all the agendas would be online, there was nothing said about whether or not we could request paper agendas going forwards, because we always like to make notes on those, especially at planning meetings, as my colleagues here have sit on planning before, always want to make notes on those. I think it's an important point that, okay, I'm fine with the laptop dealing with my casework and contacting officers, etc. It's absolutely fine. But when it comes to the meetings and the agendas, I think something needs to change going forwards so we can use the agendas how we want to rather than what's forced on us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. I'll now ask Councillor Callaghan to wind up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand and I share councillors' frustrations across the chamber as to the situation with IT and the pace in which it has been rolled out. Where I disagree with Councillor Baggett, however, is that for me, I don't believe we should be throwing officers under a bus on this tonight. It was a decision of the Cabinet on the 20th of March to proceed with this, 8 weeks before an all-out election. It could have been a decision that was deferred. It could have been a decision that was left to the new administration to come in and to look at how we were going to roll it out, at what pace and at what scale. We were left, not just on this, but we've been left a pretty poor inheritance on a number of things, and we're having, this is week 4, we're having to try and work our way through this problem. Where I think there is a difference in the debate tonight versus what we're being asked to consider as members is on the direction of travel that we're being asked to go. And I think that members across the chamber are in agreement that we do need to be smarter in terms of how we work as councillors, that the IT equipment that we do have is not going to blow up in people's homes. Microsoft would not be on the block for that. But it is a decent set of equipment for us to work with, and the direction of travel is that this is where we need to go. I agree with what is said around paper agendas. I am not a fan of having to try and scroll through a computer screen to see the agenda. It is very difficult, and I think we might have to have a conversation outside this space about how councillors in meetings can be provided free of charge without the need to have to themselves come up with it. But we will have that separate conversation. The only other thing to say that was mentioned tonight that I think was of note was just how much Councillor Headley agrees with me, which is always a good sign, really. Not the first time, actually. He agrees with me on a lot more than he would ever care to share. But I would say to members tonight, I will take away what is being said about the frustrations over the IT. Conversations Councillor Yacoub and I have already started with the directors about looking at what more we can do to help the members to do their elected duties when it comes to IT. But for now and for what we're doing, we are moving in a direction that is digital and IT first, and we need to embrace that, and I urge members to support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. I shall now move to the vote on item 4, for the Independent Review Panel Report on IT allowance for members. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. All those against, please indicate. And any abstentions, please. That's 32 for, 6 against and 1 abstention. Therefore, the vote is carried. Thank you. I now want to refer members to the supplementary agenda that was sent out, which includes the remaining reports on the agenda. Moving on to item 5, the proposed revisions to the Council's constitution. I call on Councillor Callaghan, Leader of the Council, to move the Monitoring Officer's report. This is 10 minutes and he does not require a seconder. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The report before Council tonight aims to tidy up elements of the Council's constitution which have been either left for too long or required changes following external reports and recommendations. There is also an emphasis on increasing the democratic functions of the Council following the governance changes a couple of years ago. These changes are essential to ensure our governance remains clear, transparent and effective for both the Council members and for our residents. Firstly, we're updating Part 4.9, which covers the urgent decision procedure rules. This update aims to clarify the processes for making urgent decisions, ensuring they are consistent and transparent. This includes clearer guidelines on key decisions, general exceptions, special urgency procedures and the call-in process. These changes will help streamline our decision-making and make it more accessible to all involved. Next, we have revised the Planning Committee protocol. Our Planning Committee plays a vital role in determining planning applications, and it is crucial that its operations remain fair and transparent. The revised protocol developed with the Planning Advisory Service incorporates best practices from other councils. Key improvements include public speaking guidelines, balanced approaches to support and opposition, and clearer rules for approving applications contrary to officer recommendations. These changes will enhance the fairness and the efficiency of our planning decisions. We are also updating the petition scheme. The new scheme will allow for online petitions from platforms other than our website, making it easier for residents to engage with us. Petitioners will now be required to provide their name and address to validate their petitions, ensuring they are from individuals who live, work or study in Basildon. Additionally, measures will be introduced to manage duplicate petitions, maintaining the integrity of the process. Finally, we propose revisions to Article 13 on decision making. Given the current financial climate, we recommend increasing the key decision financial threshold from £400,000 to £500,000, and this adjustment reflects inflationary changes and ensures that our oversight remains effective without being overwhelmed by smaller financial decisions. These proposed revisions are designed to make our council more efficient, transparent and accessible to our community. They reflect our commitment to continuous improvement and good governance, and I urge members to vote for the changes.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. The matter is now open for debate. Will you please indicate if you wish to speak on this matter? Thank you. Councillor Shader. Schroeder.
Schrader, Mr Mayor, but close enough. Mr Davies. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've not time to cover all 4 revisions, so focus my attentions on the Planning Committee protocol. I served on planning on and off 7 years, and while I'm no longer on the committee, and in some respects it's not my circus, not my monkeys, I've reservations about this, but preface my remarks by saying, for what it's worth, I agree with about 2/3 of the report. Regular comfort breaks, layout of the room, all sensible. Members will be aware that there have long been complaints from the public gallery that proceedings can't be heard. If anyone can get highways to attend, they'll deserve our thanks. Councillors across all parties, including many dual-hatted county members, have long advocated that and tried and failed to make them attend. I made a spirited attempt myself about 10 years ago when I was first appointed and got precisely nowhere. But maybe, backed up by this report, we'll have better luck. I never liked technical briefings or found them useful, so rarely attended. I think topic-based training is a good idea and broadly welcome more member involvement in pre-planning advice. The protocol on decisions contrary to officer recommendations remains clunky. It still entails open discussion between members and officers that's bound to become disputatious. It's counterintuitive. Clearly, officers need to give proper advice, but it's bizarre to essentially tell members live on camera their decision is wrong. Members are entitled to vote against the recommendation or they're not. So we need a better way of dealing with that. I see little improvement here and expect old problems will persist. Where I seriously part company with the report is recommendations 3, 4 and 5. Specifically, measures seeking to restrict public participation. This is something I've spoken against in this chamber before, whilst opposing reforms proposed by my own government. So it's not a partisan point, planning isn't whipped, and the committee is cross-party. All of us, as elected members, have an interest in promoting a planning system that inspires public confidence and encourages rather than stymies public participation. Public understanding of planning is increasingly important. I'd say it's currently poor and unlikely to be improved by the council throwing up barriers to public participation, making it more difficult for residents to attend and speak to raise their concerns. I believe this council should want to hear those concerns. Recommendation 3 seeks to restrict the number of public speakers, while Recommendation 4 imposes a deadline for registering to speak. I completely disagree with PAS's conclusions and recommendations. The report, it seems to me, tries to make scapegoats of the public, blaming them for the fact our meeting's overrun. Mr Mayor, you've served on planning yourself, as have other members here. I'm looking particularly at my old friend and sparring partner, the Deputy Leader, Councillor Mrs Brown. We know that those meetings often go on far, far too long. But that has little to do with the public and everything to do with officer reports that are perhaps a bit too ponderous and repetitive, bearing in mind we've all had the agenda for about a week and should have read the reports. But the main culprits, we all know, is certain of our colleagues who, over the years, and I'm not thinking of anybody in particular, though I dare say 1 or 2 names bubble to the surface of our minds, have been rather too fond of the sound of their own voices, spoken too frequently and at too great a length, probably guilty of that myself. The public shouldn't be silenced due to our verbosity. The report touches repeatedly on the need for better time management. I gently suggest that ought to be down to better self-discipline amongst ourselves. The blame cannot rest with the public, whose contribution to our meetings is already relatively limited and should not be curtailed. There's also a claim on page 6 of the report, under 2.7, that current arrangements undermine the ability to control the balance of views. Again, I completely disagree. It shouldn't be for the council to curtail members of the public seeking to oppose a scheme because there's more of them than there are people supporting it, typically the agent for the developer. The public will rightly see this as yet another move to load the planning system in favour of developers who hire professional agents to come and advocate for them. I'm running out of time. I've just had a beep. It's very difficult to cover off all of what's in this report in the time I have allotted to me. I would like to move formally an amendment to recommendation 2 that this particular part of the recommendations be referred to a working group, cross-party. I know that the administration is very keen to move forward and progress things, and I'm sure I will be accused of just trying to delay everything. But I say this in all candour to all members across the chamber, that it behooves us to get this right. I don't think this would be a great look to the public, and I would like to formally move that amendment. I haven't arranged a seconder, so I look to a seconder in the room. It's up to members whether we want to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Schrader. Do you have a seconder?
Seconded.
Councillor Baggett. Okay, so the debate moves to the amendment. Are there any speakers on the amendment? Councillor Blake.
Yeah, I'll speak on that now. Andrew, you got your...
Oh, sorry.
No, I'll speak on that now because I was going to bring this up at the initiative. I just think it's plain wrong. I mean, I really will be interested. Mo, I've got on with years and always will do. I saw her at a meeting some time ago with the Steeple View members. Packed audience. Mo speaking, absolutely brilliant, absolutely fantastic turnout. So I'm going to find it very hard, I'm sure Mo will find it very hard to put a hand up for this, stifling debate, because that's what you're asking for. We want to hear things come across. There have been times, actually last year, when somebody from the audience, late on in the actual talk, came up, it was over by the pub in Billericay. That was developed, actually got burnt down since then. But the reality of it was, they suggested something right at a very late stage about parking and about where the waste was going to go. Nobody knew that was going to happen. It was a great idea. We deferred it and we came back and the developer worked with us and actually moved it. It was great. But that was after more than 10 people had spoken, believe me. That person might well have been not able to speak under this new format. The person came forward having listened to the developer speaking and then decided that they wanted to speak on it as well. Now, I have to ask the question, it's going to be a balanced view when we email in. Who decides what that balanced view is? Is it an officer? Is it a member? Is it Mo herself? Be interested to know that. And when do we actually let people know whether they've been accepted or not? I think, is it the 5 o'clock of the day before? So what happens if those people put it in at, I don't know, 5 to 5, for example, and then they go to work next day? How are they going to be informed if they don't look at their emails again, whether they're going to be okay to come along to that meeting at night? What about the people who actually have not got emails or might not even phone calls, but they might want to come down and actually voice their view? How do we get in contact with those people? How do those people get their message across? They can't. We're discriminating against people who have not got that technology to be able to do that. So all these things I don't think have been fought for enough. And in all honesty, I totally agree with Councillor Schrader's amendment there, because it's wrong. And honestly, I will be amazed, knowing Mo as well as I know Mo, and the heart that she's got when it comes to people having their say in public, that she will support this, because it's just fundamentally wrong. Mo will know how to manage a planning meeting. She'll know if people are stepping over lines. She'll hold them to the 3 minutes. She'll give a little give and take, because that's what she does. That's what she does best. So I'm fully supportive of Mo on the way she would handle this. But I do agree, it's probably more down to the fact that some of us members that have not actually conducted themselves well enough in the past and gone on and on and on. So I totally think this is not being looked at in a roundabout way. I think the general public out there will just see this as stifling debate, just stifling what actually could come forward as a very, very good point that somebody could make. Could have been the 11th speaker, comes up with something that throws us all, a curveball. And we're going to say to them, not going to do that. And again, what I'd be really interested to know is who decides what is a balanced view. That I can't understand. It could be a biased opinion by an officer, by a member. So where does that balance come in? If you've got one developer that comes forward and 9 people are against the development, and you say, well, they're the 10, that's going to be great. But if someone comes in, another developer comes in, are you going to say, actually, we'll take one of those 9 off and put the developer in? It's cockeyed. It really, really hasn't been thought through well enough.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, we are blessed having Councillor Mo Larkin as the Chairman of Planning. And as Councillor Blake has so kindly said, I just wonder if Mo's baked one of her cakes and stashed it for me. I can't think why. But she's been Chairman of the Bench of the Magistrates. You don't get Deputy Lieutenant. I know some people, they're not here, they lost their seats in May, thankfully, like to grass up to Lord Lieutenant. Mo has done something. But what I'm trying to say is Mo is a fair person. She's a just person. And she will treat the members of the public equally. But what I see in the constitutional changes, I'm sure Councillor Blake will remember the Dry Street maintenance, so will Councillor Headley, that we had at the hotel for the outlanding planning permission. If everybody came along at that meeting and said, please don't build on Dry Street, it would be a very long, drawn-out meeting. But it was very well organised and people put in differing arguments. And that helps the opposing side make a better case, and it allows members to look at things. But if everybody comes there for a pro forma speech near enough, then where's the benefit? It forces people to think about the case long and hard and think, what are the angles to challenge in this application? So then that the planning committee, and most importantly the officers recommending, have to think on their feet and look at planning law. So to conclude on that point, we are blessed with Councillor Larkin as the Chairman of Planning. I refer back to outline phase 1 of the Wesley Green development in my former ward, my county division, and it didn't come to a planning committee. Now that was the personal decision of the then planning chairman, and we had to change the constitution to make 10 properties or more come to the planning committee. Well, with Councillor Larkin, we're not going to have that sort of problem. But we've had issues over the years, and at full council we appointed Councillor Larkin, and she will be fair and just. My third point, what was said by Councillor Schrader, some of it I quite agree with, because myself, Councillor Callaghan, the lady speaking about this point, and myself and Councillor McGarren, we went to County Hall to object to the Pitsea incinerator, and the chairman of that committee would not let us speak. The elected representatives were not allowed to speak on a planning application at County Hall. So with respect to the Conservatives, speak to your colleagues at County, because when I went to the first of the 2 meetings, the officer said under the Constitution, I had to show what I was going to say. Yeah, okay. And I chanced my arm, as you would expect me to. And they have a thing there where one resident can speak in favour, one resident can speak against. And if they've run out of against or falls, then the public have to shut up, even though they've took a long drive to County Hall. I understand the concerns of the oppositions, but while Councillor Larkin's in the chair of planning, it will be fair and even-handed, which I think everybody in this room in this borough will want. And most importantly, keep and defend this borough's ability to determine planning applications. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Myers.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I do have a declaration of interest to make. I was interviewed by Paz last year as Vice Chair of Planning. I agree with pretty much everything that Councillor Schrader said. I agree with the majority of these recommendations, but at no point at that meeting were we discussing curtailing public speaking. I have sat on planning for last year, and I know my colleague Councillor Schrader and some who aren't here have sat on it for many years. normally you have a gallery full of people, maybe only 3 or 4 people actually speak and don't actually use their full 3 minutes to speak. So normally the speeches don't go past 30 minutes anyway. So it's a bit redundant to put this in. What I do have a concern about here, and it's not mentioned, is that it was always customary that ward members would always have 5 minutes to speak. Well, I think that's wrong. We are representing the public. Therefore, I agree with Councillor Schrader's amendment to look at this again and to consider that ward members have 5 minutes rather than general public of 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gavin Callaghan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on the amendment, which we will not be supporting, just a couple of things. Councillor Blake made an impassioned speech. The only problem with what he said was that not a lot of it was true. And part of the problem that seems to be being advanced tonight is that we're somehow curtailing the public from being able to speak. What I'm not hearing is the members on that side saying that we should be changing the rules about full council meetings, because we are proposing the exact same procedure for a planning committee as is adopted for a full council meeting, a 30-minute limit on the contributions. And the crucial line that hasn't been adhered to in any of the contributions so far is about the discretion of the chair to use their latitude. So if there are 11 speakers and somebody comes along and they're desperate to speak, I'm sure the chair of planning will use their discretion to allow that person to speak. The problem that we are addressing here in this report is the fact that at the moment the council doesn't have any policies whatsoever when it comes to this. And one of the things that Councillor David Brackenby, who was part of the PAS committee, a Conservative councillor in Northampton who was the one who helped to put this together, one of the things he's identified is that because you don't have any policies at all, you're opening yourself up to problems. It's a policy decision. We're adopting a baseline tonight. If over the course of the next 12 months or 2 years or whatever, we want to change the policy, then councillors have the opportunity to do that. But in the first instance, we need to, at the very least, adopt a policy that we can put forward. And I also think it would be remiss of members to think that the only thing that's in this PAS report, bearing in mind the reason why we have this PAS report is because of the awful state the planning committee got itself into on their watch, but the ridiculous situation that we were left ourselves in meant that we had this planning advisory service report, part of the LGA, and last time I was here they were desperate for the LGA to do a peer review, and then they've done one into planning and now they want to ignore their recommendations. But we shouldn't forget that there's also within this report identified performance issues. It identifies committee operations. It identifies officer and councillor conduct around the training, which was mentioned. It also talks about the ludicrous position where we had conflicts here between cabinet members sitting on the planning committee. That should never ever have been allowed to happen, and yet it was every single week. We were seeing cabinet members sitting on planning committee. So you could, if you listen to the contributions of the members opposite, think that the only thing in this report tonight around the planning protocol is about standardising the system of people being able to come in and speak at a planning committee, but there is so much more in that planning protocol that they have not put into their contributions tonight. And the final thing I would say is that in terms of the public coming forward to register wanting to speak or wanting to participate in a planning committee, the same situation applies in terms of, as I say, wanting to get in touch via email or telephone to speak at a full council meeting. It's the same situation for the residents with, I don't know, wanting to get a new black bin or white or blue sack, the criteria that was set by the previous administration, that you have to get in touch with the council via email or telephone to be able to do that. So you could go down this route that they're doing with this amendment and their contribution tonight and say that the only thing in this is about curtailing public speaking time, when actually, as we've also heard, the contradiction there from Councillor Myers, very few times this would even be a problem in the first place. So let's just adopt a policy and then work from there. I think, that would be the sensible approach. Look at the full planning protocol that is here. We are, as I said at the AGM, We are a council that is flashing red when it comes to the government over the way this council does planning. We need to get on with adopting this protocol. If we want to make amends going forward, we'll be open to listening to what people say once we've tried it. But in the first instance, we need to establish a baseline policy, and I urge members reject this delay amendment and let's move on to the substantive and vote it through.
Thank you, Councillor. I have no further speakers on the amendment. No, okay, sorry, Councillor Larkin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't really want to reprise much what the leader has said, because I was absolutely appalled to realise that members of the Cabinet were on planning, and the amount of numbers that were on planning, 11 people, which made it really, really awkward, where you should really only have 7 or 8 at the most. It's better to have an uneven number on planning. And just to go back to the borough plan as well, we get a lot of decisions that are made because we refuse things, because we haven't a borough plan. And this isn't this administration's fault. It was changed under the previous administration. And the flashing red always appears, because sometimes they go to appeal, and what happens is they go for costs, and the government say, yes, we're going to have that, because we have to have a certain amount of numbers in our council of housing. So we have to be very, very particular about this, because if we keep going on refusing things, the government will come along, or county council, and take this away from us. Then we get no decisions made that we want. So we have to be fair. And as for people talking, under the previous administration, the chair of planning, I came along, like Councillor Blake did, to speak on it. And the chair was quite rude to people. You've gone over your time. Does it really matter if we go over a little bit of time so that person can then say what they need to say without them sitting there absolutely exhausted and I want to say what I need to say? And it makes people go out of the room, bang the doors, and we don't really want to do that. We want to make planning fair. We've got to remember we're only here because the people vote us here. And we must listen to what the people say, because I've always been a sort of, I like area committees, because I think with an area committee, it's within the councillors of that area, and if they don't like what you're saying, even on planning, they can change their mind about it. And I think that's a good idea to bring that back, and I think they should have planning as well, because it comes within their areas, they know their areas, and it's a good idea. So, Councillor Schrader, I listen to what you say, and we will be try to be fair. We haven't been like the previous administration and put cabinet members on there. Councillor Myers, I appreciate what you said, but obviously you don't go back a long time with planning and how it used to be. I've been under lots of administrations, and I still don't think it's really fair. We try our best what we can do. And I'm sure that I agree with most what's on this, because I would be fair to people and let them talk, let them have their say, and come along. And I'm sure even if they didn't actually get that in by a Monday, I'm sure I'd let them have something to say, like Councillor Callaghan has suggested. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Larkin. Okay, I now move to the vote on the amendment. All those in favour, please indicate. All those against? Are there any abstentions? Thank you. The amendment has been lost. Thank you. I now move back to the substantive. I have Councillor Baggott and Councillor Adele Brown. Councillor Baggott.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, should I be surprised that Councillor Callaghan has pushed through planning amendments that favour the developer at the expense of residents? No, really I shouldn't, because I guess that was to be expected. However, I was quite right to remonstrate with me for lambasting officers earlier, so I take that on the chin, and thank you very much for that. Because this report, which he has moved, so therefore I will put the blame on him, is an incredibly poor report, which contains confusions and uncertainties within the process, within the Constitution. And we really need to make sure that we get the Constitution right, because of the law of unintended consequences if we don't. And what I'm referring to is in the urgent decisions, because it implies to me that in certain circumstances, if the chairman of urgent scrutiny is not available, that the decision defaults to the mayor or deputy mayor. That's how it reads to me. Within this system that we currently have, my understanding is that the mayor role and the deputy mayor role is a civic function, not an executive function. So we are transferring an executive function to the role of the mayor and the deputy mayor. And that, under the Local Government Act, I don't think is the spirit that was intended by the Local Government Act. There is the provision for a directly elected mayor that has an elected role. There is no provision for a civic mayor to have an executive role. And yet that's what it says. And I would like some sort of clarity on that as to whether that is the intention. It also refers in there to, it then talks about chairman and vice chairman. I'm not too sure whether that's a cut and paste from the old committee system that it's still referring to, or what chairman and vice chairman it's actually referring to, whether it's actually referring to the open scrutiny chair and vice chair, because initially in the report it does imply that it's only the chairman that actually would get the pass if they're not available for it to go to the mayor. So just an element of confusion which would be useful to clarify, because these sort of things otherwise could come back to bite us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baggott. Councillor Adele Brown.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, for giving me the opportunity to address members this evening and also the public. I want to be clear that as Cabinet Member for Strategic Planning and Infrastructure, I'm here to advocate for this new planning protocol. This is an essential step towards a more efficient, fair and transparent planning process for Basildon Borough, which myself and our planning officers, following the advice of Local Government Association and the Planning Advisory Service, have put together. I want to stress, no matter what Councillor Baggott might feel, this is not something that Councillor Callaghan was part of that process. This is something that myself and our officers have looked into. We need to be clear that we live in a time where the expectations for public engagement and accountability in local government are higher than ever. This new protocol represents a significant leap forward in meeting these expectations. I just want to highlight a few of the key changes and why these are so crucial when we are defending our decisions for inspectors when developers appeal our processes. First, we've made significant improvements to the public speaking protocol by setting out a clear registration deadline of 5 p.m, not the night before, two working days before. Obviously, you've not read the report clearly. We can ensure that our process is organised and fair. Public speaking will be for up to 30 minutes per item. In line with full council, as previously highlighted, the public have 30 minutes for those meetings. This strikes a balance between inclusivity and efficiency. Unlike other councillors, I do not believe that we need more time than our public, and I think our public voices are just as valid as our own, and therefore councillors will also receive 3 minutes. To alleviate Councillor Blake's concerns, it has already been mentioned that it's crucial that we ensure that the public are not shut out. Completely agree. And that is why it says in the protocol that the chairman may use and exercise discretion in respect to public speaking if it is a larger or more complex planning application. We've all been in meetings where they've been to like 3 o'clock in the morning and lots of public had needed to speak. And so it's important to recognise that at times that would be so. But as Councillor Myers highlighted, in most meetings we have 1 or 2 members of the public wishing to speak. It is unusual that we would have 10. Deferred applications will now follow the same specific procedure of re-registering for each meeting. This will ensure that the most current and up-to-date and relevant public input is considered every time the application is discussed. Consistency in rules reinforces fairness and transparency, guaranteeing that our process remains clear and unbiased. From now on, if the committee votes against an officer recommendation, fully entitled to do. I've voted against officers' recommendations before, as have many of my colleagues here tonight. This will then be automatically deferred. This will enable officers to produce a report in line with the chair that reflects the objections stated by members. Additionally, this will also allow officers the opportunity to explain the implication of that decision that goes against recommendations, ensuring that we are fully aware of potential consequences, including, which is what is best practice, in lines with appeals and the costs of such appeals. We've also clarified guidelines for materials and petitions, that no materials, letters or presentations can be made on the night during the meeting. However, these can be used up to 2 days before and can be part of the report. Indeed, can also be a supplementary sheet on the night. All of us have seen that before as part of our usual planning process. These changes are not just procedural. They are a pledge to our community, a pledge that this council will handle planning matters with the utmost integrity, efficiency and openness. By voting for this protocol tonight, we are committing to a process that serves our residents better and upholds the trust that they place in us. Importantly, these changes will also strengthen our position, with items going to an inspector for a developer appeal, following guidelines set out by the Local Government Association and the Planning Advisory Service. And let's face it, a bit of common sense. There will not be a single cabinet member of this administration sitting on planning. Mr. Mayor, I urge all members to support these changes. Together we can ensure that our planning procedures are not only fair and transparent, but also a model of excellence for this council to follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Sargent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have much to say because a lot of it has already been said, but I'm absolutely appalled that the voice of our communities has been stymied here this evening, or it will be. Absolutely, because planning to the members of the public is absolutely vital. They come here to have their say, and I'm surprised at what some of the people that know a lot about planning have said. You keep it to 30 minutes, and even you're taking down the ward members' time. That's totally, totally unfair. And all I can say to Councillor Brown is, through you, Mr. Mayor, is that time will tell, because we have some very large developments that will be coming up in this borough. And all I hope is that when our residents come here and want to have their say, that the chairman of the committee will allow that to happen, because if it don't, you will stymie absolutely the voice of the people that you are saying that you are caring for, when it is most absolutely obvious that you have no care whatsoever.
Thank you, Councillor Sargent. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It must be the influence of Rishi Sunak's ability not to listen that the party opposite is struggling to listen in. But in 2 weeks' time, the public can vent their opinion and he'll have to listen. Well, we've had the Chair of Planning make it crystal clear. We've had other members say the same thing, that Mo will be fair, and if people want to speak, she will let people speak. I say through the Chair to the Mayor, to Councillor Sargent, every ward has 3 borough councillors instead of 2s and 3s. So the councillors will get 15 minutes to speak on an item. 15 minutes. Sorry, 9 minutes. Good, you are listening, and you can count. You'll have to get selected for after the general election. They're looking for a leader of those 2 abilities, to listen and count. Well, Miss Councillor Turner, I could see you in 10 Downing Street.
Thank you. No conversations across the room. Councillor Smith.
I'm just looking at their future. I think the next Prime Minister after Keir. But it's been crystal clear that if any member wishes to speak with their colleagues, they get 9 minutes, right, to represent their residents. If there are other residents that wish to seek and submit alternative opinions and views, Councillor Larkin said she will let them speak. If someone is genuinely late submitting a comment because they've got some answer back, etc., from some outside body, the Chair of Planning, Councillor Larkin, has said fine. I don't see what the objections are to council at this, because we have the most fairest member of this council chairing the Planning Committee. Those who know the leader very well will know me and him have had close locking of arms for the appointment of the Chairman of Planning, because I wanted to ensure we had the fairest Chairman of Planning, and he agreed. So why are members so vehemently against this when you had the fairest, most open-minded person you could have as a member of this council to chair the Planning Committee? You don't chair the bench of the magistrates in this borough if you're not fair and you're not just.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Before I bring in Councillor Callaghan to wind up, I'm just going to ask the Monitor Officer to answer the previous question from Councillor Baggett. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Just to be clear, the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny isn't exercising an executive function, so I am satisfied with the procedure that is proposed. Thank you. So the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny isn't exercising an executive function, so I am satisfied with the procedure that is proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Picking up on a few of the points that were raised, I mean, Councillor Sargent, they seem to be moaning that they want more time to speak. But judging by their contributions tonight, I'm not sure they really do want the public to hear from them for any more than is absolutely necessary. I mean, what a load of waffle we are listening to when it comes to curtailing the public's say, when actually that isn't what's happening at all. And in their own contributions, they've admitted that this is on such a rare occasion. It would be key decisions, major planning decisions that come forward that attract a large audience. And we've already said discretion can be exercised there. The other thing I would say is, as I've mentioned in the previous debate about the amendment, it's a policy that can be reviewed. We can keep it under review, but in the first instance, we need a policy. So let's get a policy on the books, and then we can review it as we go to see if more changes need to be made. Councillor Baggett raised a point, and the monitoring officer has just been clear about that. The Chairman of Overview and Scrutiny is not a member of the Executive. They're not a Cabinet member, therefore they would not be able to make a decision. Far be it from me to point out on page 9 and 10, if he actually read it, it's pretty clear that when it comes to the Mayor's role, as is outlined here, it is about whether or not the Mayor asks for the decision to come to full council, depending on whether it is a key decision or a general decision. So he can relax when it comes to the Mayor being called into politics to have to make decisions. That's fine. He can leave it to me and the Cabinet to do that. We will be able to do it, and the Chair and Vice Chair of Overview and Scrutiny will always be appointed. The only other thing to point out is I thank Councillor Schrader for highlighting the issues around Essex County Council highways not turning up to our meetings and delaying things like the Langdon shopping centre from finally getting off the ground because they've not bothered to sign the form they need to sign. My advice is always, if Essex County Council can't be bothered to turn up, they should get out the way and leave Basildon to do it ourselves. But we have a planning advisory service report that is very clearly saying that Essex County Council should be turning up to these meetings, and they should be part of the decision making. And I hope a copy of this will be sent to the Highways Authority so that they can reflect on that as well. I've already mentioned that discretionary powers will rest with the chair when it comes to the issue about public speaking. He mentioned the public understanding of planning is poor. Well, I wonder why. Might it have something to do with running around the town telling everyone you can overturn planning decisions when you can't, like on tower blocks? For example, he's typing away on his computer. He doesn't want to face up to what he and his colleagues did to the borough for the last 2 years, or 3 years as well. But that is an important point. If we want people to understand how planning works and the powers that councillors actually do have, then we need to be honest about what the law actually gives us the power to do. And finally, I think he did do the council a service by, in as many words, referring to the fact that the good people of Pitsea South East saved us all an inordinate amount of time having to listen to Craig Rimmer going on and on and on at planning meetings, and hopefully he...
someone else, be fair.
But hopefully we won't have to endure that anymore now that we've got a new planning committee. But as I said in the last meeting, in the last debate, Mr. Mayor, this planning protocol is about so much more than just a question of whether or not the public can speak. The public still get a say. The public are still getting the same amount of say they get at a full council meeting. They still get the same amount of time to speak as they would at other scrutiny committees as well. So it would be completely wrong for Councillor Sargent and her colleagues to somehow allude to the fact that that isn't happening. Let's get this policy adopted. Let's get it on the books. Yeah, let's get it on the books and then let's go from there. And if changes have to be made, if we need to keep it under review, then councillors have the opportunity to do that anyway. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. And now I'll move to the vote. All those in favour of item 5, the proposed revisions to the Council's constitution, please show. All those against? Any abstentions? With 25 for, 12 against and 2 abstentions, the vote has been passed. Thank you. Moving on to item 6, the appointment of the Interim Chief Executive. I now call upon Councillor Callaghan, as Leader of the Council, to move the Monitoring Officer report. He has up to 10 minutes and does not require a seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to recommend to Council tonight that as of July the 8th, 2024, Kim Bromley-Derry should join us as the Interim Chief Executive and Head of Paid Service. This appointment is crucial to ensure we maintain strong and consistent leadership during this transitional period. This appointment is a real coup for the Council. It is a testament to the exciting vision, particularly around the regeneration of Basildon, that our administration enjoys, that we have been able to attract a Chief Executive of his calibre. Kim brings a wealth of experience to our Council, having worked in 8 different local authorities in roles ranging from the Chief Executive to Director level. His extensive background in local government is a testament to his capabilities and leadership skills, and he is one of the most respected leaders in local government. Kim has previously served as the Chief Executive of Newham Council for 8 years, and during his tenure, He led the authority through significant economic growth, leveraging the legacy of hosting the London Olympic Games in 2012. His leadership during such a transformative period highlights his ability to drive positive change and manage complex projects. He has also acted as the Interim Chief Executive for Sandwell Metropolitan Borough Council in the West Midlands, navigating through significant staffing restructures. His ability to manage and lead through challenging times is exactly what Basildon needs right now. The recruitment process for a permanent Chief Executive will start very shortly, and we are confident that Kim will provide the continuity of leadership required during this period. His appointment ensures that we can continue to deliver our services effectively and maintain our commitment to the community that we serve. We aim to present to full council on the 12th of September the name of the person who we recommend to take on the permanent role of Chief Executive. Kim will assist in bringing this recruitment forward. The remaining director positions will also be filled in the coming weeks and months after a review into the previous structure was carried out and is being revised to ensure that it aligns to the new administration's priorities. I am excited to work with a Chief Executive of the stature of Kim Bromley-Derry, and I know members from all sides will benefit from his expertise, extensive experience, proven leadership and a commitment to public service, all of which make him an ideal choice to guide us through this transitional period. We are confident that under his leadership, Basildon will continue to thrive and move towards a brighter future, and I recommend his appointment to full council.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. The matter is now open for debate. I'll call on Councillor Baggott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I came here minded to abstain this evening, but we'll see how that goes as the evening goes on. I don't know whether the leader has read the Thurrock Best Value report. I'm hoping he has, but if he has, he's just completely disregarding it. And for those newer members, the Thurrock Best Value report came about when Thurrock itself got into a bit of a pickle financially, which has had a long-term effect on a 114 notice, having to get a commissioner in to oversee all of their runnings and to eventually effectively put up their council tax to horrendous rates just to try and balance the books. And I believe they still have a commissioner in administrating and running that authority. But the Best Value report made a number of points, and these are important for some of our newer councillors. They said that councillors were making decisions at council without due diligence. They were putting things through without understanding what it was they were voting for. They were entering into contracts without any form of diligence, scrutiny, or checking on what the facts were and what the situation was. And effectively, they were maladministering the processes and their duties as councillors within local government. They had just lip service to some of the contracts that were being entered into. They didn't understand what it was that they were signing up for, and as a result, the residents of Thurrock suffered. Here we have a Labour administration that's come in with a fairly hefty majority, although not overall control, that is pushing through decisions without any form of briefing to members, without any form of due diligence, without any form of kicking the tyres. And it's because of that that I am minded to move from abstaining to voting against. I've got nothing against Mr. Bromley-Derry. I'm sure he's a lovely chap. I'm sure that he's very, very competent. But when you find out that he's on £1,400 a day contract, £1,400 a day, which is more than the majority of the residents in Basildon earn in a month, without knowing how many hours he's going to be working for that day, how many days in a week he's going to be working, what his actual terms of reference is, and what the expectation of performance is, he could be the best chief executive in the world. But somebody that's being paid £1,400 a day shouldn't just be nodded through whichever majority. You should have the tyres kicked, and you should be held to account for what you're going to deliver and how you're going to deliver it. So I did come here minded to abstain, but on the fact that the processes have not been followed, members have not been engaged, there's been no dialogue whatsoever between ourselves, and I don't know about the rest of you, with regards to understanding what the cost is and how the expectations will roll out. That is wrong, and therefore I'm starting to shift to actually voting against. But that is nothing against Mr. Bromley-Derry, who I'm sure is a fantastic, very capable and professional chap.
Thank you, Councillor Bagger. Are there any other speakers on this report? Okay, thank you. Councillor Callaghan, you have 5 minutes to wind up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Baggett, the reason Thurrock got itself into a pickle was because it elected a Conservative administration that didn't do its job. I mean, that's very, very obvious. And so what he has not told the public tonight, what he has admitted from the discussion tonight, is that on Tuesday he was briefed by officers about the appointment of Kim Bromley-Derry. And he could have, at any point on Tuesday, asked the questions that he's now saying that he never got answers to. So he can't have it both ways. He can't come in here and barefaced lie to the public when he knows that 48 hours ago he was briefed on what was happening, as were other group leaders when it comes to the appointment. There is a budget envelope that has been set aside for this appointment. We do not know, as I've said, we are aiming to bring to full council on the 12th of September the name of the person that we want to take forward on a permanent basis. We don't know what the notice period may be for that person. It may be that that budget envelope is not fully used because that person can start sooner. So we are not, there is nothing being hidden when it comes to this. But let's be really clear. In the space of a week, under this administration, we've taken this council from the Championship to the Champions League when it comes to our chief executive. And that lot are against it. 4 weeks in, we've done more in 4 weeks than they did in 3 years. And keep it coming.
Thank you, through the chair.
Oh, there we go. There we go. I think
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Councillor Callaghan.
I'm sure the interim chief executive can't wait to meet Councillor Bagger, particularly after his comments just then. But let's be really clear. We are bringing in somebody of extremely high calibre to run this council. It would never have happened if this administration hadn't have taken over. It's no surprise to me that the Conservative Party are now minded to vote against it, or at very best they're going to abstain. Because whenever this council likes to move forward, whenever we do anything progressive, whenever we are taking the borough into the future, that lot are kicking and screaming, trying to keep us back, drag us down. Yesterday's men who struggled to spell AI, who cannot even look at something so obvious as this report as to how this is of a benefit to this council, to our residents, to our businesses, to the services that we provide. They have to oppose it for opposition's sake. So lads, if you want to go out and you want to vote against Kim Bromley-Derry CBE coming to Basildon as our interim chief exec, you go and knock yourselves out. We'll vote for it.
Thank you, Councillor. I remind members not to talk to each other during debates. Are there any other members wishing? Oh, I've rounded up, haven't I? So the vote is needed. All those in favour, please indicate. All those against? Abstentions? That's 25 in favour, 1 against, 13 abstentions. So the vote is carried. Thank you. There are no emergency motions for consideration, so this meeting is now closed. Thank you.